The morning sun cast long shadows across the gleaming marble floors of Meridian Tower, a 40-story monument to corporate success that pierced the Seattle skyline like a needle threading through clouds. Inside, the building hummed with the quiet efficiency of a well-oiled machine, each floor buzzing with the energy of deals being made, dreams being chased, and fortunes being won or lost with the click of a mouse. On the 38th floor, where floor-to-ceiling windows offered a breathtaking view of Elliott Bay, 8-year-old Marcus Chen pressed his small face against the cool glass, watching seagulls dance between the skyscrapers far below. What none of the rushing executives or chattering office workers could have predicted was that in just a few minutes, this ordinary Tuesday morning would become a day that would forever change how an entire corporation viewed the people who kept their world running. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. The 38th floor of Meridian Tower belonged to Chun Industries, a technology empire built from nothing by a man who understood that innovation meant nothing without the right people to nurture it. The corporate offices sprawled across the entire level, with conference rooms named after constellations and workstations arranged in clusters that encouraged collaboration. But for Marcus, this wasn't a place of business meetings and quarterly reports. It was simply where his father worked, a magical kingdom of elevators that sang soft music and water coolers that bubbled like friendly dragons. Marcus had been visiting his father's office since he could walk, usually content to sit quietly in the corner with his tablet or a stack of coloring books. His father, Daniel Chun, was the kind of CEO who believed that family came first, even when billion-dollar contracts were waiting to be signed. Today was different, though. Today was Bring Your Child to Work Day, and Marcus was bursting with the excitement of a young explorer finally getting to see the mysterious world where his dad spent most of his waking hours. The morning had started perfectly. Daniel had given Marcus a proper tour, introducing him to department heads who knelt down to shake his small hand with mock seriousness, showing him the executive break room with its espresso machine that looked like something from a spaceship, and even letting him sit in the big leather chair during a brief video call with colleagues in Tokyo. Marcus had felt like a prince in his father's kingdom, wide-eyed and grinning as employees waved at him through glass-walled offices. But children, especially bright and curious 8-year-olds, have a way of finding adventure even in the most controlled environments. While Daniel stepped into an urgent conference call that couldn't wait, Marcus had wandered from the executive suite, drawn by his natural curiosity and the freedom of having an entire corporate floor as his playground. The building's architects had designed the space with an open concept that encouraged movement and collaboration, but they hadn't considered how appealing the wide corridors and interesting alcoves might be to a young boy with an explorer's heart. Elena Rodriguez had been working as a custodial technician at Meridian Tower for 3 years, and she took pride in every spotless surface, every perfectly aligned chair, and every gleaming window that reflected the Seattle morning light. At 52, she had the kind of quiet dignity that came from understanding the value of honest work, regardless of what others might think of her uniform or her cart full of cleaning supplies. She had raised 4 children as a single mother, working multiple jobs to keep them fed, clothed, and in school, and now, with her youngest finally in college, she was saving every penny she could for the nursing degree she'd dreamed of earning since she was 17. Elena moved through the corporate offices with the invisible efficiency of someone who had learned to work around the important people, the ones who wore expensive suits and carried themselves with the confidence that came from never having to worry about whether the rent would be paid on time. She had perfected the art of being present but unseen, there but not intrusive, essential but easily forgotten. The executives were polite enough when they noticed her, offering brief nods or distracted smiles. But most of the time, she might as well have been a ghost drifting through their world of power lunches and strategic planning sessions. But Elena noticed everything. She saw which executives worked late into the night, leaving behind coffee cups stained with exhaustion and determination. She knew who kept family photos on their desk and who seemed to live entirely for the next big deal. She understood the rhythms of the corporate world better than most people who actually worked in it, because she was the one who cleaned up after their victories and their failures, their celebrations and their disappointments. That Tuesday morning, Elena was working her way through the executive wing, her movements as precise and methodical as always. She had learned to time her cleaning schedule around the ebb and flow of meetings, making sure she was never in anyone's way during the important conversations that happened behind closed doors. The 38th floor was her responsibility, and she took that responsibility seriously, treating each office as if it belonged to someone she cared about personally. She was emptying wastebaskets in the eastern corridor when she heard the sound that would change everything. It was subtle. At first, just the faint scraping of small hands against metal, followed by the soft shuffle of sneakers on polished surfaces. Elena paused, her trained ear picking up something that didn't belong in the usual symphony of corporate sounds. Keyboards clicking, phones ringing, printers humming, elevators chiming, conversations murmuring through glass walls. But this was different. This was the sound of a child, and there shouldn't have been a child wandering alone in the executive offices. Marcus had discovered what he thought was the perfect hiding spot. Near the building's eastern wall, there was a section where the architects had created a dramatic architectural feature, a kind of stepped platform that led up to a series of windows designed to showcase the spectacular view. The platform was bordered by a decorative metal railing that was exactly the right height for a small boy to grab onto and climb. To Marcus, it looked like the perfect observation deck, a place where he could get an even better view of the city spreading out below him like a giant map. What Marcus didn't understand, with the fearless confidence of childhood, was that the railing wasn't designed to support the weight of someone climbing on it. The decorative metalwork was meant to look elegant and substantial, but it was actually anchored with a mounting system that could handle the pressure of people leaning against it, not the dynamic force of an active 8-year-old using it as playground equipment. The architects had never imagined that a child might see their sophisticated design element as an irresistible climbing challenge. Elena rounded the corner just as Marcus was pulling himself up onto the railing, his small hands gripping the decorative metalwork with the determination of a young adventurer conquering a mountain. For a split second, time seemed to freeze. Elena could see everything at once. The child balanced precariously on a railing that was never meant to bear his weight, the 38-story drop just beyond the windows, and the way the metal supports were already beginning to shift under the unexpected stress. Her body moved before her mind had time to process the full danger of the situation. Elena dropped her cleaning supplies, the crash of the plastic bucket hitting the marble floor echoing through the corridor like a gunshot. She lunged forward, her arms reaching out just as the decorative railing gave way with a grinding screech of metal against metal. Marcus, suddenly unsupported and off balance, tumbled.
Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now, back to the story.
Backward, his small body falling toward the unforgiving marble floor. Elena caught him just inches before his head would have struck the ground, her arms wrapping around his small frame as they both went down in a tangle of limbs and momentum. The impact drove the breath from her lungs and sent shooting pain up her left arm. But Marcus was safe, cradled against her chest like the most precious thing in the world. For several heartbeats, they lay there together on the cold marble floor, both of them stunned by how quickly everything had happened. The sound of the falling railing and Elena's dropped supplies brought people running from all directions. Administrative assistants emerged from their workstations, their faces pale with alarm. Security guards appeared from the elevators, their hands instinctively reaching for their radios. And from the conference room at the far end of the hall came Daniel Chun, his executive composure cracking as he saw his son on the floor in the arms of a woman he had never really noticed before. But in those first crucial moments, Before the crowd gathered and the questions began, it was just Elena and Marcus, both of them breathing hard and staring at each other with the kind of intensity that comes from shared experience of real danger. Marcus's dark eyes were wide with shock and the beginning of tears, while Elena's weathered hands smoothed his hair with the instinctive gentleness of someone who had spent years comforting frightened children. The crowd that gathered around them was a mixture of corporate executives, administrative staff, and building security, all of them trying to understand what had just happened. The twisted metal railing lay scattered across the marble floor like abstract sculpture, and the cleaning supplies were spread in a wide circle around Elena and Marcus, evidence of how quickly she had moved to reach him. Someone was already on the phone with building maintenance, and someone else was calling for medical assistance, but Elena's attention was focused entirely on the small boy in her arms. Daniel Chun knelt beside them, his expensive suit forgotten as he reached for his son with shaking hands. His face was pale with the kind of terror that only parents understand, the bone-deep fear that comes from seeing your child in danger and knowing how close you came to losing everything that matters. When Marcus looked up at him with those wide, dark eyes and whispered, "Daddy, the lady caught me," Daniel felt something crack open in his chest that had nothing to do with broken ribs and everything to do with broken assumptions. For the first time in 3 years of walking past Elena Rodriguez in the hallways, of seeing her work quietly and efficiently in the background of his important corporate life, Daniel really looked at her. He saw the way she cradled Marcus with the tenderness of someone who understood exactly how precious children were. He saw the pain she was trying to hide in her left arm, the way she bit her lower lip to keep from wincing as she shifted position. He saw the uniform that marked her as invisible to most people in his world, and he saw the eyes that held the kind of strength that came from years of making difficult choices and never giving up. The emergency medical team arrived within minutes, led by a paramedic named Sarah, who had the calm efficiency of someone who dealt with crisis situations every day. She knelt beside Elena and Marcus, her trained eyes quickly assessing both of them for injuries. Marcus seemed to be physically unhurt, though clearly shaken by his adventure, but Elena was holding her left arm in a way that suggested she had absorbed most of the impact when they hit the floor. While Sarah examined Elena's arm, asking gentle questions about pain levels and range of motion, Daniel found himself studying the woman who had just saved his son's life. She answered the paramedic's questions with quiet dignity, downplaying her own discomfort and focusing instead on making sure Marcus was truly unharmed. When the paramedic recommended that both of them be taken to the hospital for a more thorough examination, Elena's first concern was whether she would be able to return to work later that day. It was in that moment that Daniel realized he didn't even know her name. This woman had literally thrown herself between his son and serious injury, had possibly saved Marcus's life, and Daniel couldn't remember ever having a real conversation with her. The recognition hit him like a physical blow, shame mixing with gratitude in a way that made it hard to breathe. How many times had he walked past her in these halls, too focused on his next meeting or his latest crisis to see the person who kept his world clean and orderly? The paramedic determined that Marcus was fine, just shaken up from his adventure, but Elena's left wrist was likely sprained from the force of breaking their fall. She would need x-rays to rule out a fracture, and the paramedic recommended at least a few days of rest to let the swelling go down. Elena listened to these instructions with the expression of someone calculating how much time off she could afford, how many hours of pay she would lose, and whether her supervisor would understand that she hadn't been injured because of carelessness, but because she had prevented a much more serious accident. Daniel watched this internal calculation play out across Elena's face, and something shifted inside him that would change how he saw not just her, but everyone who worked in the background of his corporate empire. He realized that while he had been building his company and focusing on quarterly reports and market expansion, he had lost sight of the human beings who made his success possible. Elena wasn't just a custodial worker who happened to be in the right place at the right time. She was someone's mother, someone's daughter, someone with dreams and struggles and a story that he had never bothered to learn. As the paramedics prepared to transport Elena to the hospital for her x-rays, Daniel made a decision that surprised everyone, including himself. He announced that he would personally ensure that Elena received the best possible medical care, that her time off would be fully paid, and that she would face no consequences whatsoever for the accident. More than that, he wanted to know her story, to understand who she was beyond the uniform and the cleaning cart. The news of what had happened spread through Meridian Tower like wildfire, carried by the kind of office gossip network that could transmit information faster than any corporate email system. By the time Elena returned from the hospital that afternoon, her left wrist wrapped in a support bandage and strict instructions to rest for at least 3 days, the entire building seemed to know about her heroic actions. Executives who had never acknowledged her existence were stopping her in the hallways to thank her, and administrative assistants were asking about her well-being with genuine concern. But the real change began that evening, when Daniel Chen called Elena personally to check on her condition and to ask if he could visit her at home. Elena lived in a modest apartment in South Seattle, a 20-minute bus ride from the gleaming towers of downtown. It was a world away from the executive suites of Meridian Tower, but it was clean and comfortable and filled with the kind of warmth that comes from a home where love matters more than luxury. Elena's apartment told the story of a woman who had spent her life putting others first. The walls were covered with graduation photos of her 4 children, each one representing years of sacrifice and determination. There were community college certificates in business administration, evidence of Elena's own educational dreams that had been repeatedly delayed but never abandoned. The furniture was modest but well-maintained, and every surface was spotless, with the same attention to detail that Elena brought to her work at Meridian Tower. When Daniel arrived at Elena's door that evening, carrying flowers and a card signed by Marcus, he was struck by how different everything looked from this perspective. The corporate world that defined his daily existence seemed suddenly distant and artificial compared to the genuine warmth of Elena's home. She invited him in with the same quiet dignity she brought to everything, serving coffee in mismatched mugs and apologizing for the simplicity of her surroundings, in a way that made Daniel realize how backwards his priorities had become. Over the next 2 hours, Daniel learned more about Elena Rodriguez than he had learned about any of his employees in years. She told him about raising 4 children alone, after her husband died in a construction accident when Marcus's age. She spoke about working multiple jobs to keep her family together, about the nights when she fell asleep studying for her high school equivalency exam after working 16-hour days. She shared her dream of becoming a nurse, a goal she had been working toward for over 30 years, but kept deferring as her children's needs took priority. Elena had grown up in a family where education was valued but not always accessible, where hard work was seen as the pathway to a better life even when that pathway seemed impossibly steep. Her parents had immigrated from Mexico with nothing but determination and faith, working in fields and factories to give their children opportunities they had never had. Elena had inherited their work ethic and their belief that dignity came not from what job you held, but from how well you did whatever job you had. She had met her husband, Miguel, when she was 19 and working as a hotel housekeeper while taking night classes at the community college. Miguel was a carpenter who shared her dreams of building something better for their future family. They had planned to support each other through school, taking turns pursuing their education while the other worked to pay the bills. But life had other plans, and after Miguel's death, Elena's dreams had been put on hold indefinitely as she focused on raising their children and keeping the family together. Each of Elena's 4 children had graduated from high school, and 3 had gone on to college, achievements that Elena spoke about with quiet pride. Her eldest daughter was a teacher, her second son worked as an automotive technician, her third child was finishing a degree in social work, and her youngest was studying engineering. Elena had made sure that her children had the opportunities. She had sacrificed, working extra shifts and taking on additional jobs to pay for school supplies, graduation fees, and college applications. But now, with her children grown and independent, Elena had begun to dream again about her own future. She had been slowly accumulating college credits, taking online courses and night classes whenever her work schedule allowed. Her goal was to complete a nursing degree, something she had wanted since she was a teenager volunteering at the local community health clinic. At 52, she knew she was starting later than most, but she also knew that she had the life experience and determination to succeed in ways that younger students might not. Daniel listened to Elena's story with growing amazement and shame. Here was a woman who had overcome obstacles he couldn't imagine, who had raised successful children while working multiple jobs and pursuing her own education. She had done all of this without complaint, without asking for special recognition, without expecting anyone to notice her sacrifices or acknowledge her achievements. And she had done it all while maintaining the kind of integrity and work ethic that made her save a child she didn't even know, simply because it was the right thing to do. As Elena talked about her dreams of becoming a nurse, Daniel began to see connections he had never noticed before. Elena's attention to detail, her ability to anticipate needs before they were expressed, her skill at working efficiently without disrupting others. These weren't just the qualities of a good custodial worker. They were exactly the qualities that made exceptional healthcare providers. Her years of experience managing multiple responsibilities, solving problems with limited resources, and caring for others despite personal hardships had prepared her for a career in nursing better than any traditional educational program could have. That night, Daniel went home to his luxury penthouse overlooking Elliott Bay and couldn't stop thinking about Elena's modest apartment and extraordinary story. He realized that in all his years of building Chen Industries, he had focused on recruiting talent from prestigious universities and established corporations. But he had never looked for the hidden potential that might exist among the people already working in his building. How many Elena Rodriguez's were there, working quietly in the background while harboring dreams and talents that could transform his company if only someone bothered to notice? The next morning, Daniel called an emergency meeting with his human resources director, his operations manager, and his chief financial officer. He told them about Elena's heroic actions and about the conversation that had opened his eyes to how much he didn't know about the people who made his company function. He announced that Chun Industries was going to implement a comprehensive employee development program, starting with a full review of advancement opportunities for every single person who worked in their building. But Daniel didn't want to wait for corporate programs and policy changes to help Elena. He had learned that she was just 12 credits away from completing her associate degree in pre-nursing, credits she had been accumulating slowly over several years while working full-time and managing her family responsibilities. He made a decision that would change Elena's life forever, though he would present it in a way that honored her dignity and independence rather than making her feel like a charity case. Daniel arranged to meet with Elena again, this time in his office, but not to discuss her job performance or her accident report. He wanted to offer her something that would recognize not just her heroic actions, but her long-term potential. Chen Industries, he explained, was launching a new educational partnership program with local colleges and healthcare systems. They were looking for exceptional employees who wanted to advance their careers in healthcare, and they were prepared to provide full tuition support, flexible scheduling, and guaranteed employment opportunities for program graduates. Elena listened to Daniel's proposal with the careful attention of someone who had learned not to trust offers that seemed too good to be true. But as he explained the details, she began to realize that this wasn't charity or pity. This was recognition of her worth and investment in her potential. Chen Industries would pay for her remaining college courses and her nursing school tuition, adjust her work schedule to accommodate her class times, and guarantee her a position in their corporate health and wellness program once she earned her degree. The offer was structured as a win-win arrangement that benefited both Elena and the company. Chen Industries would gain a healthcare professional who understood their culture and values, someone who could help them develop employee wellness programs based on real-world experience rather than theoretical knowledge. Elena would get the chance to finally achieve her dream of becoming a nurse, with the financial support and scheduling flexibility that made success possible rather than just hopeful. Elena accepted the offer with tears in her eyes and a handshake that Daniel would remember for the rest of his life. She didn't just say thank you. She made a promise that she would prove worthy of his investment, that she would work harder than any student in her program, and that she would find ways to give back to the company and the community that had given her this incredible opportunity. Over the following months, Daniel watched Elena balance her custodial duties with her accelerated course load, and he was amazed by her dedication and performance. She maintained the same high standards in her cleaning work while excelling in her studies, often arriving early or staying late to make up for time spent in classes or clinical rotations. Her professors were impressed by her maturity and practical experience, and her fellow students sought her out as a study partner and mentor. But the real transformation wasn't just in Elena's career trajectory. Her example had inspired Daniel to look more closely at all of his employees, to invest in professional development programs that recognized potential rather than just credentials. He discovered that the security guard who worked the night shift was a former police detective who could help improve their corporate security protocols. The administrative assistant in accounting had a master's degree in finance and ideas for streamlining their financial processes. The maintenance supervisor had engineering experience that could help them reduce their environmental footprint and operating costs. Chen Industries became known as a company that valued all of its employees, regardless of their job title or educational background. They developed mentorship programs, tuition assistance initiatives, and career advancement pathways that allowed people to grow and contribute in ways that matched their abilities and interests. The company's reputation for treating employees well attracted top talent and improved retention rates. But more importantly, it created a workplace culture where everyone felt valued and motivated to do their best work. Elena graduated from nursing school with honors, delivering a commencement speech about second chances and the importance of believing in people's potential rather than just their current circumstances. Daniel and Marcus were in the audience that day, along with Elena's 4 children and several of her colleagues from Chen Industries. When she walked across the stage to receive her degree, the applause was thunderous, a recognition not just of her academic achievement, but of the determination and grace with which she had pursued her dreams while helping others achieve theirs. After graduation, Elena joined Chen Industries' newly created Employee Wellness Department, where she developed health and safety programs based on her unique combination of healthcare training and intimate knowledge of workplace realities. Her first initiative was a comprehensive safety review of all building features and protocols, ensuring that architectural elements like the decorative railing that had nearly caused Marcus's accident were properly reinforced or redesigned to prevent future incidents. But Elena's impact extended far beyond policy changes and safety improvements. She became a symbol within Chen Industries of what was possible when people were given opportunities to reach their full potential. New employees were told the story of the custodial worker who saved the CEO's son and went on to become the company's director of employee wellness. It became part of the company culture, a reminder that heroism and potential could be found in unexpected places and that everyone deserved to be seen as more than just their job title. The relationship between Elena and the Chen family deepened. Over the years that followed, Marcus, now older and wiser, never forgot that Elena had literally caught him when he was falling, and he developed a special bond with her that transcended the typical employer-employee relationship. Elena became like an honorary grandmother to Marcus, someone who checked on his progress in school and celebrated his achievements with the same pride she showed for her own grandchildren. Daniel often reflected on how a single moment had changed his perspective on leadership and success. Elena's heroic actions had saved Marcus from physical harm, but the lessons he learned from her story had saved Daniel from a much more subtle but equally dangerous fall. the gradual loss of connection with the human beings who made his success possible. He realized that true leadership wasn't just about making strategic decisions and hitting financial targets. It was about recognizing and nurturing the potential in every person who contributed to the organization's mission. The story of Elena Rodriguez and Marcus Chen became something of a legend within Chen Industries and beyond. Business schools used it as a case study in employee development and corporate social responsibility. Leadership conferences featured Daniel as a speaker on the importance of looking beyond job titles to see the whole person. But for Elena, the real measure of success wasn't the recognition or the career advancement, although she treasured both. It was the knowledge that she had found a place where her skills and values aligned, where she could help others while continuing to grow and learn herself. Elena's children watched their mother's transformation with amazement and pride. They had always known that she was extraordinary, but now the world was beginning to recognize what they had seen all along. Her success gave them permission to dream bigger for themselves, to believe that setbacks and delays didn't have to mean the end of their aspirations. Elena had shown them that it was never too late to pursue your dreams, especially when you had the support of people who believed in your potential. The custodial staff at Chen Industries also felt the ripple effects of Elena's story. They were treated with new respect and consideration. Their suggestions were welcomed, and opportunities for advancement were made available to anyone who wanted to pursue them. Several of Elena's former colleagues went back to school or moved into different roles within the company, inspired by her example and supported by the programs that had been created in response to her success. Marcus grew up with a different understanding of worth and potential than many children of his privileged background. He learned to see the person behind every job title, to appreciate the dignity of all honest work, and to understand that heroism often came in quiet, unexpected forms. When he was old enough to understand the full significance of what had happened that day on the 38th floor, he wrote Elena a letter thanking her not just for saving his life, but for teaching his family about the importance of seeing and valuing every person. Years later, when Marcus was in high school and thinking about his future career, he spent a summer working in different departments at Chun Industries to better understand how the company operated. He worked in maintenance, in the mailroom, in customer service, and in the executive offices, learning something valuable from each experience. But the week he spent shadowing Elena in the employee wellness department was the most eye-opening of all. He saw how she had used her unique background and perspective to create programs that genuinely improved people's lives, and he began to understand that making a difference didn't require a corner office or an impressive title. Elena's influence on Chun Industries extended beyond individual success stories to fundamental changes in how the company operated. They became an industry leader in employee development, workplace safety, and corporate social responsibility. Other companies began to study their model and implement similar programs, creating a ripple effect that benefited workers across multiple industries. Elena had not just changed her own life and the life of one small boy. She had started a movement that recognized the potential in every person, regardless of their current circumstances. The decorative railing that had nearly caused such tragedy was replaced with a safer design, but the company decided to keep a small plaque near the spot where Elena had caught Marcus. The plaque didn't tell the whole story, it simply read, "In recognition of those who see danger and choose courage, who see potential and choose investment, who see others and choose compassion." Visitors to the 38th floor often asked about the plaque, and employees were always happy to share the story of Elena Rodriguez, the woman who had caught a falling boy and in doing so, had lifted up an entire organization. Elena continued to work at Chen Industries until she was well into her 60s, eventually becoming Senior Director of Employee Development and Wellness. She oversaw the expansion of educational programs, mentorship initiatives, and career advancement opportunities that helped hundreds of employees achieve their professional goals. Her approach was always personal and practical, based on her understanding that everyone's path to success looked different and that the most important thing was to provide support and opportunity rather than judgment or assumptions. When Elena finally retired, Chen Industries established the Elena Rodriguez Scholarship Fund, providing educational support for employees and their children who wanted to pursue careers in healthcare, education, or other fields focused on helping others. The scholarship wasn't just about financial assistance. It included mentorship, internship opportunities, and ongoing support to help recipients succeed in their chosen fields. Elena served on the scholarship committee, helping to select recipients and providing guidance based on her own experience of overcoming obstacles to achieve her dreams. The impact of that single moment when Elena caught Marcus continued to ripple outward long after both of them had moved on to new chapters in their lives. Marcus eventually joined Chen Industries as a junior executive, but his approach to leadership was profoundly shaped by the lessons he had learned from Elena's example. He instituted regular listening sessions with employees at all levels, created cross-departmental project teams that included people from different backgrounds and job functions, and made sure that the company's success was shared equitably among all the people who contributed to it. Daniel Chen often spoke at business conferences about the day that changed his perspective on leadership and success. He would tell audiences about Elena Rodriguez, the woman who had saved his son and taught him to see potential where he had previously seen only job titles. He would challenge other executives to look beyond their corner offices and quarterly reports to recognize the human beings who made their success possible. And he would always end with the same message: that true leadership wasn't about having all the answers or making all the decisions, but about creating opportunities for others to discover and develop their own potential. The story of Elena and Marcus became more than just a corporate legend or a feel-good anecdote about second chances. It became a template for how organizations could recognize and nurture the potential that existed at every level, regardless of job titles or educational credentials. It demonstrated that heroism often came in quiet, everyday forms, and that the most important investments a company could make were investments in the people who showed up every day to do whatever job needed doing. Elena's legacy lived on in the hundreds of employees who benefited from the programs she had inspired, in the safety protocols that prevented future accidents, and in the culture of respect and opportunity that became the hallmark of Chen Industries. But perhaps most importantly, her legacy lived on in the understanding that everyone had a story worth knowing, dreams worth supporting, and potential worth nurturing. She had shown that it was never too late to pursue your dreams, that setbacks didn't have to mean the end of your aspirations, and that sometimes the most extraordinary people were hiding in the most ordinary places, waiting for someone to see them not just for who they were, but for who they could become. The morning sun still cast long shadows across the marble floors of Meridian Tower, and the building still hummed with the energy of deals being made and dreams being pursued. But now it also hummed with something else: the recognition that every person who walked those halls, whether they wore expensive suits or cleaning uniforms, had their own story of struggle and triumph, their own dreams and potential, and their own capacity to make a difference in ways both small and extraordinary. Elena Rodriguez had taught them all that heroism wasn't about seeking recognition or praise, but about seeing what needed to be done and doing it, regardless of whether anyone was watching or whether anyone would ever know your name. And in the end, that was the most powerful lesson of all: that the cleaner who saved a boy from falling had also saved an entire organization from the fall into indifference, and had shown them all how to catch each other when it mattered most. Up next, you've got two more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.